Welcome back to Paul versus Destin. We're back after a short break. Joining me today is Paul Tassi. Paul, how you doing?
Good to be here. Glad to be back.
Great. Yeah, today we're going to be talking all about the Epic versus Apple versus Sony versus Microsoft court case, and we're going to argue to the death about it. It's good to have you back, Paul.
Yeah, I took a week off from arguing to the death, so now I got to get back to it.
You were able to pull yourself back together after that fatality. It was a pretty good one.
It's a miracle.
Yeah. So on today's show, we're going to talk all about this court case. We're recording this on Wednesday, May 5th. May 5th. Oh, my goodness. So some stuff is probably going to happen throughout the week, but today was the Microsoft day. They had Microsoft on the stand answering a lot of questions, but we're going to go back actually a day before that to sort of talk about everything that's been happening with this trial, starting with Sony's stance on crossplay. Basically, there have been a lot of letters revealed that have just been very, very interesting. And one between Sony and Tim Sweeney basically saying, friends are being torn apart by Sony's segregation of players on competing platforms. And we feel like it's our legal right to turn this on. And Tim Sweeney really basically took Sony to task about this anti-crossplay thing. And if you're just hearing about this for the first time, Sony is the only company that charges developers and publishers if their game has crossplay turned on. Paul, what's your reaction to all this? What has your reaction been to these behind the scenes letters, love letters to each other?
Tim Sweeney is so dramatic. It's like, I mean, this whole case is Tim Sweeney being dramatic. Like, first of all, it's kind of how he got here. This email exchange, not this one specifically, but like in general, the ones about crossplay have been pretty feisty. There's one with it's not Sweeney, it's someone else. It's like Gio Corsi from Sony talking to someone from Epic's side, and both of them come off really kind of badly. Whereas like Epic's position is like, this is happening. Like, you can either like stand in the way of progress or like get with the times, and like they're right, but like they're kind of being obnoxious about it. Meanwhile, Sony is saying like their public facing thing about crossplay, at least back then, was like, oh, we're worried about like security concerns and like the integrity of the PlayStation network. And then in the email here, they're like, how is this good for our business? No one can tell us why this is good for Sony's business. And like just saying that. And it's kind of true. And yet it's like very kind of disingenuous with what they were saying in public when we all knew what the real reason was. It's interesting. Like the whole like Sony having to pay them money thing in like certain circumstances where like, if you're playing on PlayStation, but you're not spending enough money proportionally on PlayStation, like the developer owes you some sort of royalty or something. And like, it's really murky territory. So, and I do wonder how many other companies they've done deals like this with.
Yeah. So if you make $1 million cross-platform, but $900,000 of it was made on Sony, you're good. You don't owe them anything. But if only $600,000 of that profit was made on Sony, you're going to owe them like 20 grand. That's basically, or no, like I think it was 52,000 something dollars.
Yeah, I don't know how they worked out that percentage, but
they have a whole sheet breaking down the calculation. And what was extra hilarious is the next day, the judge is like, yeah, so those documents that came out yesterday, they weren't actually supposed to go to public. I think
Sony filed a motion about it. I think they were like genuinely mad that got revealed because it made them look terrible.
Yeah, they do not look good in that scenario. Yeah. And a lot of people called them on it. Like, it's a really weird business practice. And now we know that they're the only one who does it because they're the big dog in the room, right?
Like, but like we know why, because like Sony doesn't want to open up, 100 million PlayStation players to everybody. They want you to convince your buddy with an Xbox to buy a PlayStation so he can play with you. And like, because they have such an advantage, it doesn't benefit them to like let Xbox or Nintendo or whoever access their entire network. That said, it's like, this is so inevitable that they just look absurd not going along with it, even if technically for business reasons, like it makes sense. But like, it's a very weird situation because like there's really no way out of it for them. So this is sort of the compromise they came up with. But I wonder how long that'll last. Like if they'll be able to keep kind of demanding this indefinitely, or if companies will kind of get together and start shaming them and just being like, we're not gonna pay your stupid fee. Like you can either give us crossplay or look like an idiot in front, like in front of all the players. So
yeah, so like
we'll see.
Do you think that it's still going on? Because this was from the PS4 era before the PS5 launched last holiday. Do you think this is still going on? And generally speaking, are you saying that your stance is largely gray about the scenario, or do you have like personal feelings about, like, take off your, you know, smart man hat for a second and just like, what do you think about it?
I think in terms of like the general gaming ecosystem, cross-play and for me personally, cross-save is even more important than cross-play. Like I care less about playing with people from other consoles than being able to port one version of a game to all different systems. And there was something in there about this too, where like one of the Sony stipulations was like you couldn't have V-Bucks or something like transfer that were bought on PlayStation like work on other systems. So like this is how we got in a weird situation where like if you had ever used a Fortnite account that was linked to Sony, it couldn't run the Switch version of Fortnite like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they ever fixed that, but like that was like the reason that happened. So from a player perspective, obviously I am in support of full crossplay and cross save. It's just that like, yeah, smart man hat or whatever. Like I get when you have 100 million console sales and you're probably double your next closest competitor, why crossplay doesn't really benefit you other than avoiding the embarrassment of not having crossplay. At this point, it's such an accepted practice that I think it would hurt them more than it would help them if they kept publicly distant, like not wanting to do crossplay. So
yeah, I mean, oh, you mean so it would hurt Sony?
It would hurt Sony. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, I agree with you. I understand why it makes business sense. I just think it's slimy business. I don't think they need to do business this way. They still get a huge rev share on every sale, but they're just saying, yeah, it's not enough for us. And if you look at how Xbox handles everything, they have a pretty clear 80-30 split on console, and the split is
80-30.
Yeah, I'm good at math. 70-30 split on console because they take a loss, and we're going to loss on every console sale, and that's how they make up the cost. But then on PC, because there's larger competition, they have a much better for the developer revenue split. So my personal reaction to the whole story was just like, yeah, I get why you would do that as your business, but is that what's best for gaming, to actually stop cross-play, period? Because isn't, like, everybody's making fun of Sony now because they say for the players, but they keep showing things that are clearly not for the players. You know,
that's what I mean. It's like for now at this point, I think the opportunity, like even from a business sense, the opportunity cost of like pulling yourself out of crossplay and getting roasted for that with every new release probably outweighs this increasingly antiquated idea that you're going to sell another PlayStation for everyone that has to convert from Xbox because you don't have crossplay. Like at a certain point, you've crossed the line when you're losing more than you gain, just in terms of how crappy you look. And I think we are past that point. So I don't know. Maybe they're still going to get this royalty and stuff. But again, I do wonder if companies will just be like, all right, screw this. Like, we don't need to keep doing this. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it would take a whole bunch of developers basically just saying, hey, you know what? We're going to take the L on the PlayStation revenue that we would gain here, and we're just going to launch on Xbox. Bye. You know, and I think you get enough mega games like Fortnite, and based on these emails, it seemed like they were really saying, we are going to do this. This seems like it's illegal, is what Sweeney was sort of pointing out in his emails. He's like, you know, we're looking at the lawsuit in the UK right now, and we don't think what you're doing is even legal. So we're going to turn this on whether you like it or not. And
was it Fortnite that it was Fortnite, wasn't it, where they accidentally turned on crossplay on PlayStation for like a day or something, and they're like, whoops, like
Yeah.
I thought that was Fortnite, wasn't it? They were probably just
it was
trolling
either
them.
Fortnite or Rocket League. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Oh, yeah,
It
it was. Yeah, maybe it was Rocket League.
Yeah, it might have been Rocket League. But basically, here's what Tim Sweeney said. He said, frankly, we do not believe Sony's position is even legal. Please see the attached analysis prepared by our European Council in the context of EU law, including, importantly, GDPR data, portability, mandates with direct bearing on crossplay and cross-purchase. We've also reviewed privileged analyses of follow-on implications in major jurisdictions of any punitive action Sony might take to enforce this policy. So Epic was basically like, hey, they are saying we're done with this stupid game you're playing. And I have to wonder how far along this has gotten. Sony's been dead quiet about this whole court case, except for trying to pull the documents down as soon as they possibly could. They're out there. Everybody's talking about this story. It's a really, really interesting story, and no, it does not paint a pretty picture on Sony. I have seen a lot of people pointing out, like, that's just how business works. Apparently, it's not how business works for literally everybody else in the industry except for Sony. So that's why I personally think it's a slimy practice. They're making enough money. The idea that like Destiny's going to get crossplay in the future, right? So
yeah, supposedly
is Bungie paying a hefty fee because Sony's saying that they're going to lose revenue because they're only making $600,000 on microtransactions as opposed to $900,000? Like it's really,
I guess I guess it depends if people want to go to the mat or not. Like, would Bungie come out and be like, since they're more friendly with Xbox now, be like, Sony's refusing to do crossplay unless we pay them a ransom, so everyone is crossplay except PlayStation. Like, have fun. Like, but Bungie, but all these other companies too. Like, if that became a trend, you would think that Sony would have to do away with this practice. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but now that's kind of the position we're in.
Yeah, I didn't even really think about it too much before we started talking about it, but then like reading their stance on it, reading that, hey, they don't even have a legal defense here to do this. Like, this is potentially illegal. Sony,
I don't know enough about the law to say that for sure.
Well, that's what Tim Sweeney said. I'm not Des doesn't know anything about the law. Come on.
Where's Tim Sweeney now in a very tough court case about something else he thinks is illegal? So we'll see. But
yeah, so it's just going to be really, really interesting. And I have to wonder if this ends up being a rally point or if the Fortnite event was a rally point. And that's why we're getting Destiny crossplay today. Because Tim Sweeney went to bat. He put the pressure on and he basically said, no, we're done. We're turning this on whether you want us to or not.
Well, it's interesting because so you have a game like Outriders where there are no microtransactions, and that has crossplay with Sony and everything. So how does that work? Like, I wouldn't imagine that there's a fee there if it's a game with no microtransactions. So in some cases, maybe it's just kind of like whatever and like no skin off Sony's back. But I don't know. I feel like it's probably a case by case basis to a certain extent.
Yeah. I think the only game that does it right now off the top of my head is Fortnite. Destiny still doesn't do it. It hasn't been turned on yet. Is that next season or the season after in Destiny?
Wait, there are other games that have crossplay, aren't there?
Between PlayStation and Xbox?
Yeah, I think.
I don't know.
There aren't there?
I don't know.
I mean,
let us know in the comments.
Outriders does. That's what I was just saying. You can play crossplay with PlayStation and Xbox. God, I hope I'm right about that. I'm pretty sure that's true.
I don't know, Paul.
Well,
I don't know.
I'll look into it.
I think it's the same.
Are you saying it's just
family.
PC and like PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Xbox, or you know what I mean?
Currently, as far as I can remember, and if we're getting roasted in the comments, it's probably deservedly so. We didn't plan to go here in the conversation, so Paul's going to look it up. But basically, I believe it's all within the same console family, and the only game that I can think of that actually allows PlayStation and Xbox to play together, Master Chief to be dancing with Kratos, is Fortnite.
Yeah. Okay, you might be right. I might be wrong about Outriders.
Yeah.
I think it says, okay. Yeah, I think it's like cross-generational. I don't think it's between Xbox and PlayStation.
And that's
okay, so you're right.
The whole reason we have all this weird terminology is because they're like, because of this. Mm-hmm. This is why. You start peeling back the layers of the onion, and Sony's in the middle there going, oh, my bad. Sorry, none of your games, you can't play with your friends on PlayStation because we lose $20
I just keep thinking of the South Park episode where they all divided up into factions based on the consoles they had because they couldn't play together. That's all I can think of.
Well, moving on from Sony, Epic is also a big contender in this whole thing, and
in their own trial, yes.
Yeah, in their own trial. It's just a fascinating topic to talk about. And Paul, I apologize for going totally off track on that first one.
No.
But it's really fun to talk about. So Epic, basically, to get the Epic Game Store off of the ground, has this whole breakdown. And this is just another thing. It's like we never, ever would have seen stuff like this. Ever. It's just an unprecedented look behind the curtain in the games industry. So we now know what Epic Games pays for the free games that launch on the Epic Games Store. Subnautica, the buyout price was $1.4 million, so they have a breakdown of what each user costs. They got 804,052 accounts, so that means each account cost $1.74. Super Meat Boy, on the other hand, was 50 grand, but they only got 97,000 users from that sale, so it was 52 cents per user. And then, you go down, you can just go through this whole thing. Like The Witness was $400,000. They paid $2.59 per user. So meaning they got a worse ratio than they did with Super Meat Boy, for example. And then there's games like, what's another one? World of Goo. They paid 50 grand. They only paid 32 cents per user. So what do you think about this? Is this like standard practice? Is this how you think it works behind the curtain for other companies? Like when Xbox brings games to Game Pass, is this how it's going on behind?
That's the only thing I can think of. Cause I don't think Steam probably has a balance sheet like this because everything comes to Steam more or less.
PS Now, maybe?
Bought it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, PS Now maybe, but I would definitely think Xbox because that's the thing that comes to mind. Maybe it's a little different because it's not always an exclusive premiere. It's like this is coming out on PlayStation, but it's quote free on Game Pass. So but again, it's probably just Microsoft cutting a huge check. But in terms of the Epic thing, what I took away from that was a really good deal. And this seems like it sounds like a lot of money, but in practice, if you really look through this, I mean, they paid. That list was like $14 million for all of those games, and all the users they got from that in games industry, revenue, whatever. That's pretty good. Mm-hmm. I would think. And then even the bigger ones, I think they paid something like $140 million to launch Borderlands 3, like obviously a massive game and not a small indie game, but they made that back in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
In terms of what they raked in from early sales of that game. So even the big ones, I don't know if every big one they've ever launched there has done the same thing, but their gambles seem to be paying off, although the store is not profitable yet.
Yeah, the one that lost the most, well, it's a loss leader, like Xbox and Game Pass, right? Mm-hmm. And we can get into that in a little bit. But the biggest loss, I say that lightly, was Celeste, which they paid $750,000 for, and they only got a user acquisition cost of $12. So that means for the amount of users that they got, which was 62,523, the cost breakdown just is bad for Epic. So, but for the most part, like you said, Paul, this is nothing when you're in the game industry. What does a game cost to make these days? I remember when I started in the industry, it was like 20 million. That's probably a joke now.
I mean, a big game is 100 easily. But yeah, that seems like very good on their end. But the whole debate about profitability and whatever, and it'll take them longer to be profitable because they take a smaller cut, unlike all these other game stores. So that's Apple was saying they wasn't going to be profitable till like 2027, and Epic thinks they'll be profitable by 2024. I think so.
Not going to take very long.
Yeah.
So with this information, and I'm just totally going off the cuff here, but we now have a peek behind the curtain of what it costs to bring games to a service like Epic. We know Game Pass has just been kicking butt. When do you imagine that they might recoup the cost? Because we know that Game Pass isn't that profitable. It's either marginally profitable or not profitable based on the Aaron Greenberg comment on What's Good Games. So do you think Microsoft could be close to crossing that threshold of going into profitability? And I say that with the absolute knowledge that you and I don't know anything about what's going on behind the curtain there.
I mean, from what I do know behind the curtain, just in terms of general gaming stuff, it's like they are budgeting these massive, massive games coming up that are all going to launch on Game Pass. So that alone makes me really wonder. This is the whole argument Sony has been making. It's like you cannot budget these games on a subscription service. Like they are too big, they cost too much. You can't do it. You can do it if you're Microsoft and you have unlimited money, more than like almost any company in the world.
Mhm.
But in terms of that becoming like profitable, like Game Pass is going to be this huge moneymaker. It's hard to see that happening anytime soon. But like in this business, it's like the question is does it matter? Like Netflix takes on tons and tons and tons of debt to finance all the content they make, and like they're a good business that everybody thinks is amazing, and they're Netflix. They're the Netflix of the industry. So like if Microsoft can get to that point and Game Pass is the Netflix of the gaming industry, I think they're comfortable enough making money everywhere else in all these other different ways, as opposed to necessarily like, okay, it's Game Pass or bust. Like I would find that hard to be like a make or break for them.
It's fascinating. And just to answer my own question, I really think this. I think we're going to see major things happen for Xbox in the next 2 years, because I do think that they need a little bit more time for the games that are in the cooker, so to speak, right? But I think in 2 years we're going to have that same regular cadence of mega titles that Sony's sort of at right now. Sony basically has at least one game a quarter, if not one game a month, hitting over the next few months. Like we got Ratchet and Clank down the line. We have new content lined up. Horizon, God of War. That's just this year, right? And I think
God of War is not this year. Get out of here.
Early next year, whatever. But they have a good cadence of games coming down the line. So one of the things that I wanted to throw to you, because I found this really interesting, the redacted slides to me are absolutely fascinating. Xbox doesn't talk about their revenue. They don't talk about console sales. And if you look at the redacted slides that Tom Warren pointed out here, it's basically console revenue by sales channel. Nintendo 1.5 billion, Microsoft redacted, Sony 11.2 billion. And I believe these slides were provided by Microsoft as evidence, which is why they were able to redact the slides. So we know that Microsoft is somewhere between 1.5 billion and 11.2 billion, but that they're second.
But where?
In console sales. Yeah, but where? So let's say on the low end, they're at like 2 billion. We know that's not a realistic number, right? Where do you, just for fun, and everybody, this is just sort of for fun, where could we imagine that they are?
I mean, so I don't quite understand if this includes, if it's like digital copies of games or if it's also like Game Pass. Because if it's also Game Pass, that would make it higher, obviously. And I could see it maybe going to like 7 or 8 billion potentially there between Xbox Live and Game Pass and things like that. But if it's just digital sales of games, I would expect it to be closer to what we at least estimate last gen sales were, where PlayStation we think it's outsold Xbox around 2-1, maybe a little more. So it could be closer to like 5.5 billion. If it was just proportional. And like obviously Nintendo sold a ton of Switches and stuff, but Nintendo's digital store and digital storage is freaking terrible. So that's why they're so low. But I would be surprised if it was over 7, just off the top of my head. Again, it depends what we're counting, but
no,
I don't know. What about you?
This is just sort of a fun guessing game. I think you're really close. I think you're really on the money, but just to be hyperbolic, I'm going to say 11.1 billion. No, I'm just kidding. No, I would say on the high end, they're at 9. Just because they have a lower install base than Sony does, right? So on the high end, they're at 9, and then I think you're right on the money. I think they're right around 7 to 8 for the low end. I can't imagine that they're anywhere near 3 or 4. That would be pretty low, and they don't seem like they feel like that they're on their back foot or anything. And then when we start looking at the PC client revenue by sales channel, I mean, this is just sort of, this is a even larger discrepancy. Epic is 0.3 billion. Microsoft is redacted. And then its Valve is 4.5 billion. So I'm not even going to play that game because it's PC sales, right?
People buy games on the Windows Store.
Yeah. But then we get a
Yeah.
narrower look here because they say health of key console players, robust SW&S profit margins for all key console players except Ubisoft, Activision Blizzard is least dependent on console. Nintendo's at 5.2 reported CY. I can't remember what that's short for. Calendar year 19. Nintendo was at 5.2. Xbox is somewhere above that, and Sony was at 13.3. So
Wait, what is the 7% of revenue of Nintendo not from console? What is that, like Pokemon cards? Like they don't.
yeah, I have no
I guess
idea.
I don't understand what that's counting, but I would assume Microsoft would be lower than either Sony
Amiibo.
or Nintendo because of the Windows Store.
Could be Amiibo. Yeah, who knows?
Oh, Amiibo, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, just seeing this, actually, the question was, I'm actually looking at the wrong slide. So this is a bonus segment that I actually didn't mean to talk about. But yeah, so how do you feel about where they're at? Do you feel like they're doing well? Does this send off any interesting alarm bells for you?
I mean, I don't think it's anything that we didn't really know about. Like, we know that they lost last generation to PlayStation pretty handily, and then this information isn't new enough to see if there has been kind of significant improvement this gen. But like everything is, everything is selling out instantly, and it's just kind of a supply race at this point. So
Yeah.
we know Sony is the fastest selling console ever with the PS5, and like we haven't heard Xbox say that, but I would assume that the new Xboxes are launching much better than the last ones. But again, Microsoft never talks about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
They will only talk about Game Pass numbers. So that's all we really have to go on.
So I have a philosophy about this. I think they're doing better than they let on. I think they choose to withhold data because they got tired of the narrative of Sony's winning, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Because I kept writing those articles.
Yeah, because everybody's
me and
going to
100
write
other
that.
people. Yeah.
I think it's natural to take a look at the profit margins of two of the biggest gaming companies in the world and include Nintendo in that, three, and just say, okay, who's coming out on top right now? And the story for so long,
it wasn't unfair. They were tied the generation before this, essentially. Like PS3 and 360 were pretty much tied. If not, I think 360 may have even been a little ahead. But like, it was a fair comparison then, and they were perfectly happy to brag about those numbers. But then when they started losing heavily, they're like, all right, well, no point in showing people these numbers. So
yeah, exactly,
here
because the narrative was set. But now all the stories are Sony has record sales and everything like that. But then Microsoft releases their percentage increases, and then that becomes a narrative. So they're purposefully redacting that number, and I think it's a smart marketing. I think it's a smart marketing strategy.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But the topic I actually wanted to talk about with the redactions was this sales chart, the exhibit of Microsoft's testimony where they redacted stuff that was supposed to happen. And they sort of talked about how they lose money on every console. So basically, they showed the games we already know about, Gunk, Stalker 2, and Tetris Effect in their exclusivity window. But then you go to the next slide, and there was stuff that was supposed to release in third quarter that has been redacted off of this chart. There's two games that have been redacted from fourth quarter. And if you look at financial year, calendar year of 2021, there are massive chunks of redacted information. So, Paul, I have to imagine that a large chunk of this has been moved to E3, or that's the only thing that really comes to mind, to be honest. Do you think Microsoft is stacking the deck as much as they possibly can to have a killer E3, and that's why we see all these redacted slides? Or do you have another theory?
No, I think so. I mean, we're close enough to E3 now, or it's what, a month away. So, I mean, if they haven't announced stuff by now, and we know that they are going to be a big part of E3, it would behoove them to just wait for all those announcements at E3, because I don't think Sony is like specifically doing an E3 thing. Microsoft has kind of taken advantage of the whole like most people are abandoning E3 thing to kind of come to E3 every year and make it like their show now, to a certain extent, which I think they very much enjoy doing as kind of the biggest party there these days. So I don't know what that's going to entail, because I think so many of their biggest games are so far off. I could see something like a huge Starfield reveal finally, like maybe the rumors are true and it is coming out by the end of this year miraculously. I would be amazed, but something like that. I don't understand the things that have been redacted that were already supposed to be out. Like I don't get why they would have redacted stuff from the past, unless that's showing some sort of secret information I can't quite register. But yeah, I mean, it obviously does make sense for them to redact like stuff that they haven't announced yet. It's just, I don't know, like, it's MLB the show. Yeah, okay, so that was like one big thing that they came out with. But like, well, this is first quarter calendar year, so like we're
past
that. So I don't really understand what they're redacting from that. I can't. This is too small for me to read right now. But like, does this list the length of the exclusivity windows or something? Like, I can't. I don't know why. Yeah, I don't really get why they would have to redact stuff if it was already out. But I mean, who knows?
I think what happened is the games were going to come out in that quarter because these documents seem to have been created in August of 2020. So from August 2020 to today, I think some of these games, like
they could have dropped out, right?
They dropped out, or they moved their launch window to be later this year, because there's not a ton of stuff happening right now. It feels like everyone's saving their stories for June, July. E3, pre-E3 announcements, and just to have good stuff to talk about over the next few months. And, for me, it's really exciting actually to see this much blacked out, because it means we have a lot of cool stuff that we're going to learn about over the next few months. Do you have that same reaction or no?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the past year or two, especially, like, Microsoft has been killing it with its announcements. I guess we still have yet to really see anything physically come from these announcements as big as they've been, because even Halo Infinite got delayed. So none of these very cool looking or sounding games have actually hit yet. But they have been very good at making announcements. So I would expect more good announcements at E3 for sure.
Yeah. The last point that I had, and we're going to probably be pretty brief on it because it's really cut and dry. Xbox talked about how Microsoft loses money on every single Xbox sold. The quote over here on Ars Technica was, "The business model is set out to be an end-to-end gaming experience," Wright said. "Hardware is critical to delivering that experience. We need gamers to be able to have a console. We make money back in the long run on game sales and gaming subscriptions." And here's the thing. That's true for everybody. I think with the exception of maybe Nintendo, Sony's losing money on their consoles. Xbox is losing money. Xbox is losing money on their consoles. This isn't a new thing. This isn't like a mystery. Nintendo, when the NES launched, lost money on all their consoles. It's about the software, and it's about people getting into that ecosystem. And that's exciting for me because I think Xbox has the best suite of services currently available, and Sony needs to catch up. And I want Sony to compete and catch up with stuff like Game Pass, because it means we all benefit. Like, the gamer benefits at the end of the day. The developer benefits. The developers are very happy with Game Pass. So Sony, where's your answer? That's what I want to know.
Sony's answer is to charge $70 for games, so they're going to make more money that way. Obviously.
Apparently. And like the $70
plan, but that's the plan.
The $70 thing is like, people don't. I haven't seen anybody's like, I really like the $70 thing. I've seen a lot of people say, I understand that I'm still getting my value worth for $70. But when you say, well, do you like paying $70 for a game? No. Who's going to say yes?
Even Nobody. That, though, is like, it's not even like a full sell, because like, yeah, you can say like, okay, Horizon Forbidden West will be worth $70. But like, keep in mind, like, Godfall launched at $70. Like, yeah. It can be a real detriment for, and I wrote an article about this, like, Returnal, that seems like a game that would have been perfect if it was an Xbox game to go on Game Pass, because it's like something, it's a new IP, you're not sure about it, you're going to try it, whatever, yeah. But it's $70 on PlayStation. So if you're like, I don't know, that sounds really hard, like, I don't know if this is my type of game, whatever, like, you're not going to pay $70 to try it out, it's not part of PS Now or anything like that, so you're just not going to buy it. And so I think it can hurt a game like that, even if other games can get away with it. But yeah, going back to the main point, like, obviously Xbox is in a better position because not only they're selling Xbox Live, they're bundling it with Game Pass and then looping an xCloud and stuff, whereas Sony pretty much just still has, like, you got to have PS Plus and for most things, and
we have PS Now. Stream your games at 720p. Enjoy. Like,
didn't they just upgrade it to 1080p?
Yeah, they upgraded it to 1080 in 2021. Yeah, it's just kind of like, guys, and like they've invested about 1.5 billion or so into R&D. I know. So hopefully we hear more about how their services improve. But it's really odd, right? That Sony just sort of let this part of the business fall apart. And they're like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take our investments. We're going to invest in the AAA games. And we're just going to make sure we have amazing games. And that's our only play. At least the only play that we know about. And we're also going to make all games $70. That's their other play, which it's not something that I think a lot of people are like, yeah, thanks Sony for making your games $70. Meanwhile, Xbox is creating a suite of services.
Yeah, I mean, they're gambling that their games will continue to be good enough to make people like stomach a price increase without too much complaining about it. And they will. I think they will for a lot of games, but the narrative at least has been just terrible. Like I think the worst thing that has come of all of this is the situation they got themselves in with MLB The Show, where it's a Sony made game that they're selling new for $70, and then Xbox did a deal with MLB to put it on Game Pass for free, quote unquote. Like that sums it up like right there. Like that is the whole ball game, no pun intended. But
absolutely. No, I agree, because like you turn on your Xbox now and you see the Sony logo pop up before you hop on and start playing MLB The Show. And the thing is, they keep losing third parties. They keep coming up with these bad plays that make them look bad, where it's like, hey, I want to turn on crossplay. Okay, well, that's going to cost you 15% of your revenue unless you hit this threshold. Like, they need to figure this stuff out. Sony does, because yeah, okay, you have fantastic games, and Destin Legary will continue to. I'm going to play Ratchet and Clank. I'm going to play the next Spider-Man. I love the games that are being developed for the console. I'm a huge fan of Returnal. Yes, even with the saves and the scary save and the scary update that had to be reverted today, but I'm a huge fan of their games. There's no doubt in my mind that they're worth $70, right? However, you just keep painting these negative narratives about your platform and your services, and you just need to, in my opinion, they really, really need to clean up and come up with some better policies that are pro-developer, pro-consumer.
And while I don't think Sony is going to like stop making good games anytime soon,
of course,
it seems more likely that Microsoft may start making good games or more good games than they've had previously. So then when you suddenly have, 10 IPs over here and 10 IPs over here, which are you going to go with? Like, console that is potentially more powerful, console that has more services, more places to play it. Like if all things end up being held equal in terms of game quality to a certain extent, then you can't just bank on that anymore, and you need all the stuff that Microsoft has been building the groundwork for now.
Yeah. Xbox has largely said, okay, yeah, we're losing. Give us a few years. We'll see you there. And I think we're going to come to a parity point with these consoles. And it's just really, really fun talking to you about this stuff, Paul, because I make my little late night videos where I sort of ramble about it. And it's fun to talk to you sort of about all this stuff going on, because it's fascinating. And it's just really, really cool to see this behind the scenes.
Yeah, I don't get to talk to anyone on my YouTube channel. It's just me talking to the camera. So it's good to talk to you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me. And as always, this is to the death.
Finish him. Fatality. Outstanding.
All right. Once again, I've killed Destin, of course. Thanks everybody for watching. You should definitely subscribe to Destin's channel as we do this almost every week, and he has been making some awesome videos on his own. I also have a YouTube channel. You can just look for Paul Tassi on YouTube. I am mostly doing my usual looter kind of stuff, a lot of Destiny, a lot of Outriders. And then every so often Cyberpunk patches itself and I have to play that. So, but yeah, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys soon.